We're talking about Franconia, more or less, or more precisely about Mittelfranken, yeah. And I already heard that you all know the region. As Daphne, you live in Nuremberg, and I heard the Mischbacher singer, you're living in Erlangen. And so I know that you all know this region at the moment. I allow myself to tell you that in former times, so before 1933, we had in our region, you see all the little points here, 45 little communities, Jewish communities, living more or less in the countryside. And the only one that rested are the big cities, Fürth, Erlangen, and Nuremberg. And I will tell you a little bit about the cities, of course. For example, here Nuremberg, who has 3 big periods from the Middle Age up to the really bad pogroms in 1499, and then a big space without Jewish settlement in Nuremberg till 1850. And then you all know, after the Shoah, we tried to reconstruct the Jewish community in Nuremberg. So I will talk a little bit about that. And then more precisely, also about what we call Medina Oshfa. This is a little community of rural Jewish villages, Kvar. This actually would be one of my first really scientific question to you, because you will see we have a lot of writings for saying Medina Oshfa. I myself, I do it now like this. I do the acronym, so I put the Ottensauce, Schneitach, then Fort and H for Hüttenbach, because I learned with my teacher that P and F is the same, so I allowed myself to, maybe if somebody has an association to Medina Oshfa, if that means something, it would be great when you tell me that, because up to now, it's a very old tradition, but we are not sure about how to transliterate the Oshfa. Yeah, okay, just this a little detail. So this will be the points I'm talking about, and I will let Fürth on the side. Maybe you know that it is the franconian Jerusalem, because after the big pogroms in the medieval time, a lot of Jews fled to Fürth from Nuremberg also. So you see some old pictures of the Medina Oshfa. You see another writing here. This is Fürth, where we are living. So Jonathan, Anna, Corinna, and me. And this is Ottensauce. It still remains, but these two are really destroyed totally. To Nuremberg, just a new message. You all know Nuremberg, I know that. I will, maybe I give you the situation of that church. It is St. Sebald, and it's 2 or 3 years ago. So yeah, here in 18, when they found around the restoration of the church building here in the end, they found a tombstone, and which is made for Gudlin, daughter of a Rabbi Samson. And you see that she was buried in 1334. So this is quite a proof about the very, very old Jewish history in Nuremberg. And because not all the cities, maybe you saw it up here, Erlangen, for example, has a very thin story. So because the Markgraf, who settled down the refugees from France, the Huguenot, and the Huguenot, they didn't want to have Jews on their side as traders. So the Erlangen story of, the Jewish history of Erlangen is really not so powerful it is, but they never had a synagogue on their own, for example. In Nuremberg we have a long history, which is proved here with the tombstone, and it's also, of course, a bad history. I can't deny that. I think a lot of, some of you will know, that the Jewish quarter was on that place where is the Hauptmarkt at that time. And in the medieval time, the city council of Nuremberg, they wanted to erect a large market between the two settlements, St. Lorenz and St. Sebald. And actually the ruler, also Karl IV, Charles IV, he had the duty to care for the Jewish citizen who were so-called Schutzjuden. So Schutz means he had to care for them. But he caused the cities in his empire to persecute them. And you see here in the Schädelsche Weltchronik, you see how they were buried. Once in the so-named Pest pogrom, which was 1349, and at least 562 Jews were buried and burned to death in that occasion. So we have the memo book and all the names. And I'm sure that many of you will know that the Frauenkirche, which is that church, a Catholic church, that it was built on the remains of the synagogue. So this is a very impressive picture. There are a lot of people I heard are living a longer time here. So I'm sure that you know the Christkindlesmarkt, and that on this balcony here, the Christkindl is opening the market and welcoming the visitors. But in the end, it is really built on the remains of the synagogue of the medieval time. As I told you, there was a big lack of time where Jews were not allowed to settle down in Nuremberg. They had to spread, not in diaspora, but they had to spread. A lot of them, and this is seen on this map, they spread in the to little dukes or markgrafs. For example, also in Fort, where we are living, we also had they called Bünau, for example. They have a little so they settled down in the little villages around the big cities. And so with the expulsion of the Jewish from the cities, a complete new situation arose. And so some of them went to the east, of course, also to Eastern Europe really, and others, they were they arranged themselves with the knighthoods around them, and they paid special taxes. This was the situation for maybe 300 years between the end of the Middle Age and more or less the middle of the 19th century. So maybe you know that the people at that, so the Jewish people, they were excluded from the civil rights. So they don't have, for example, the right to allow the graze, also the cattle couldn't graze on the common land. And in general, they were not allowed to own land. So they were no farmers. They were not allowed to do the handicraft. So they were forced to do trade. And I love this picture that I show you now, because for me, it is somebody I can imagine. It is an engraving depict from around 1750. And I imagine that this is somebody coming from my village, so from Fort. And I imagine that he stood up at whatever 4 o'clock in the morning, and then he took what he wanted to sell. I don't know if you can, if somebody can see what it is. So he has a stick here, and he is surely a poor man. You see the same church that we already saw above, also St. Sebald. And he is selling mushrooms, yeah, so dried mushrooms. And then he also had, I have to look it up, juniper berries. Do you know what it is? Yeah, and then he has also firestones, flintstones. So you see, he's not a rich man, yeah. He went to Nuremberg. Then I found some material about him, so in the archive. Then he had to beg for the entrance at the old wall, at the city wall. And then somebody who is Christian had to be with him the whole day, because he has to, so the Christian has to guarantee that the Jew is out of the city before sunset. So it was quite a procedure to be there, but nevertheless, I think he made his, his business. He was a cuddler, a peddler, what we say, and I'm sure they didn't have a lot of, so we really talking about poor people, but nevertheless, they try to manage to establish their communities in these little rural villages. And you see, in the meantime, so as I told you, from so the regulation and the legal situation changed around 1850. And here you see some of my favorite pictures of old Nuremberg. You see the old synagogue. It was in a kind of Moorish style, so it should be a little bit, Near East. And this is the Pegnitz, yeah, maybe you know, and who knows Nuremberg, this is the Heiliggeistspital. So it was on the riverside, and all we have now is the commemoration stone am Hans-Sachs-Platz. And actually, this was not torn down in the pogrom, as in the night of the broken glasses, but it was destroyed earlier by Julius Streicher. And the other one, which was an Orthodox in the Essenweinstraße near the opera and the theater today, it was burned in the pogrom night. The Jewish people in Nuremberg, of course, they were part of the city and the civilization in Nuremberg. At that time, maybe you know, in the middle of the 19th century, they invested a lot and risked also a lot in the industrialization. They were patrons of culture and charity, and highly commended as committed really with the university. I will talk about somebody in Erlangen from the professors. And of course, they also did their service to the fatherland. They fought in the First World War. But I just put the but in here. But you all know that nothing helped them to be more German than the other thought that they are too Jewish. What I could offer, whoever has interests, I made a kind of action bound. So this is my tribute to the online semester. And I made an action bound with my students here, some of my students. And if somebody has interest, it is easy to do. Yeah, I proved it already with my pupils at school, which is also the starting point. So you are walking through the city with the app, yeah. And we created six stations, and then I think more or less you need 2 hours. So if it's gentle to go and a coffee in between, and yes, and we prepared at least 5 family histories of former Jewish inhabitants, and you learn a little bit about their fate, about the Stolpersteine, for example. Here you see about all the memorials which are in public seen about Jewish history in Nuremberg, and of course also about the survival. So if somebody has interest, he can ask Jonathan, and I will give you the link. Yeah. Okay. So if I'm speaking of school activities, you see, I'm a teacher. Yeah, I always have my pupils in mind. This is something I really appreciate. I already did it with my 8th graders, so they are here somewhere. And you see, it is a kind of cooperation from the Erste FCN, which is the local soccer club, and the Israelitische Kurdisgemeinde. And it is, of course, a project against anti-Semitism and xenophobia. And it is named after Jenő Konrad, so he's an Hungarian. He was a soccer player in 1932. And then he was really driven out of the city by the anti-Semitic agitation of Julius Streicher and his Der Stürmer. He fled, and he could escape with his daughter, who came back to the Nuremberg, also to the Erste FCN, I think 10 years ago or whatever. And then he's the historian here, Bernd Ziegler, of the Erste FCN, and they tried to establish a kind of cup, a friendship cup, and it was really a great experience. You see us here pre-corona without mask, and this was last week when some of my students and Maccabi Deutschland, he was a cool guy from Maccabi Deutschland, also from Frankfurt. And so this is something that we are doing at school, as I do, somebody does at school, to get in touch, which is maybe the most important thing here. Yeah, so just to tell a little bit about the present also. I changed my focus. You all know that Jonathan is in Erlangen, Cantor, and Erlangen, as I told you, has not such a long Jewish history. They had Bayersdorf, for example, with really great rabbis. They had Burg also, but in the center, as in the city itself, they were allowed as citizen from 1860. And one of the most honorable men was a professor, Jakob Herz. So I always think that Herz, which means heart, is nomen est omen, because he was really, they praised his charity and selflessness, and he was honored with a monument, which is today the Hugenottenplatz. So it was in the middle, yeah. And you know, of course, and you see that this was one of the first actions of the Nazis, that they destroyed the monument. And you see that they were, they laughed about him because they gave him a beard, and the beard should be torn down then also. And which is quite a curiosity that people of the city made a monument for the monument. Yeah. So maybe Sharin, you know that this is the Universitätsstraße. Yeah, it's the intersection of Krankenhausstraße and Universitätsstraße. So both were places where he have been. So Jakob Herz. And here on the back side, you have an inscription. Sorry, we remember Jakob Herz, whom citizen of this city set a memorial and destroyed it. So you have a memorial for memorial. Yeah. And actually it was initiated by a former Jewish Erlanger, Axel Bauer, who also remembered the tzedakah. So this is just one of the lifelines from the middle of the 19th century. Now I'm talking about two families, Mishpacha Katz, for example, and I think each fate is unique, but if you look at it in the end, they have a deathly end, and it is now on the archives and on our memories to remain something from them. And so I just looked. First of all, I saw the Stolpersteine, which are in the Hauptstraße nowadays, and I tried to know a little bit more about them, and I found this wedding photo, and I saw that Jakob Benesi, he came from Vienna. He was born Jew, but he was baptized with 12 years. And he took over the photo studio, so he married here. And he took over with Gottliebe, which is a very nice old-fashioned name. His wife and he and the three children they lived in the Hauptstraße Nummer 2, which was Adolf Hitler Straße at that time. And he made a lot of photos of all the noble and certificated Erlanger families. And he was, I took him also because we had a huge found in last year, not me, but the city archivist, Andreas Jakob, who is a friend of mine and a colleague. And he got a photo. So this is the family Katz-Benesi. And this is a friend of them coming to the birthday of this 4-year-old Hildegard. And nowadays, this Friedel, she is 93, and she gave that photo to Mr. Jakob, who is in the city archive in Erlangen. And he was thrilled, really, because now he had a possibility to look at that. You see the sofa here and the sofa here, because this was a snapshot, would be what we would call it, with a mystic shadow, if you ask me, because there are two of them. And even they are in a photographer's environment. They destroyed everything, also the sofa, and the whole friendly atmosphere of this Kindergeburtstag is bond in that two pictures. So you see what the perpetrators did here in the pogrom night. And so for the archive, it was really a huge found, and to see that all these children are dead and murdered, because the family was arrested in 1942, and they are missed in Auschwitz. So they were declared dead after the war. And also the rest of the family. And you see that for all of them, Günther Demnig, who does that art remembrance, he put Stolpersteine for them in front of their house. And I find another thing which was really stunning. I told you that they were baptized, so they were all Catholic, and also the children, they had the communion. And I found a little statue which was given to Erich, who was 11 years old, from the pastor. And actually this figure is still in the church, and they made a kind of, so this is a column of the church inside, and they made a kind of sign here, and they put this little wooden self-made statue inside of it. Yeah.
When did they make this tafel?
I think they made it 1991. You see?
Yeah.
So this is what is written here. So 1941, so 50 years before, this Erich, with his 11 years, he had the first communion, which is yeah, kind of bar mitzvah. And then 50 years later, somebody gave that figure, that wooden figure, from the pastor to the church, and they, yeah, at least they made a memorial, a little one. Another family, he is the one who did your job, Jonathan, in former times. Yeah, he was the cantor of the Erlanger Gemeinde. Actually, he was a very courageous cantor, and because he really stood against the Nazis, and he helped people, actually also people from Fort, because he was not only cantor, he was also the teacher, the Hebrew teacher for all the Jewish children out of Erlangen. So he went to Bayersdorf, he went to Fort, and I have a good contact with his daughter. Yeah, his daughter is, I visited her in Little Neck near New York. And actually, she's fond of being in Switzerland, and she came a lot. She's now, I think, 92 or 3, but she really had always the plan once a year or every 2 years, she will go to Europe. And in the beginning, she avoided Erlangen, but then she met a woman who took care of the old history of Jewish history, Frau Sponsel, and then they get friends, and she is really a very smart and clever old woman. And she told me also a lot about the phase in her life after immigration, because here in Germany, normally our sensibility for Jewish history ends in the pogrom night or after the war, you know. And so, because we don't have so much connection to people who survived in other countries. So this is, and for me to talk about, or to talk with Edith in her home in New York, and to talk about Cincinnati, and that her father had to work in a meat can industry. So he was a meat packer in the end. So this was not what he was, yeah, what he was meant for. Yeah, but they survived, and he was really, yeah. And I take that as a little bridge also to Fort, because I told you that we will also talk about our kfar. Yeah. I make this little point to all the words that we learned from Yiddish or Hebrew. I think you all had this impression that there are a lot of words in common, and that speech and words and our languages are really a seismographic measure to see how related the people were, because we are only learning from each other when we hear what our neighbor is talking about. Yeah, and you see we have tacheles, for example, or yeah, that somebody is meshuge, or that kaf, he's living in a kaf, in a kfar, or that he has muzzle, or he has no, yeah, vermuscled something. So we really have these words in common. And it's always astonishing also for my pupils that we have so many words from Hebrew, they would never have believed. So, a kfar, so our little fort. If you think that you could see something here, I have to say no. It's really destroyed. So this is just a reconstruction. I have plans from the actually from the Central Archive of the History of Jewish People from Jerusalem. And with these plans, we try to reconstruct our synagogue here. The only thing in 3 dimensions that we really have is the Torah. So the Torah was saved by Fritz Kimmelstiel, whom I will talk about. And it was found in the straw of a farmer in Bayersdorf, which was quite, crazy. And nobody could read what is written here. I think only Bernhard Purim, who was the founder of the Jewish Museum in Fürth, he was the first one who really read what was written here. And so they said, okay, all these names are not in Bayersdorf. It can't be theirs. And when we were in that museum with Albert Kimmelstiel, this was really one of the most touching moments when he stood there and he went down on his knees just that he could read it, because it was it's very small. And then he stood and said, my ancestors, they made the donation of the Torah in Fort. As the new congregation in Erlangen was founded in 2000 with the Rosa Wanninger, then they talked about if they could use it, if they could reuse it again. And it was a big discussion, but the rabbiner in Fürth, he said it's not a kosher one, so it can't be holy again. Yeah, so they had another, I don't know, Jonathan, do you know where your Torah is from? You know where it is from?
No, I just know that we have also something that before the war, but I don't know exactly.
Okay, yeah, because they really talked about that. Yeah. Okay. We also had a school. I told you that they tried to establish really what they need. And when I'm speaking about establishing, when we are remembering the old peddler and somebody who had really to earn his money with selling some mushrooms or some firestones, it really took long. In Fort, it took 200 years to establish a synagogue. Yeah, and then they made the school, and it was used till 1922. Then the amount of pupil was not there. Yeah, so they went to the normal Volksschule. Yeah, what we also had is a very strong SR, and in Fort we also had a kind of Hitlerheim. So it was a house for the propaganda, for the Hitler Jugend and for the Bund Deutscher Mädel. So they were there on Saturday, for example. They left school and they were sent there to be there for Nazi propaganda. And also in my little village, which is really not big, we had 29 victims of the Shoah. People who were born here and who died and were murdered in Auschwitz, in Treblinka, in Riga, in Izbica, and on other death camps. As you know, the deportation begins with the pogrom night, and most of them died really miserable. What is creepy that we have photos of the pogrom night in Erlangen. You see that they were collected, women and men. Here the men with the hats, here the women. And somebody has to have made these photos in the morning time. They had to stand in the middle of this which was the city hall at that moment. Now it is Palais Stutterheim. And they had to stand there, and nobody of them went home again. So also the family where I learned a lot of, as it was a kind of big bang of history when Albert came 12 years ago now. And he was the initiation that I tried to do my researches, and I tried to find out a little bit more about the Jewish history in my own village. You see their numbers from Auschwitz. This is his elder brother. He was deaf, so Albert has to speak for him, and he lost his whole family in Auschwitz. Also him in Auschwitz, and he lost his Lina and Fritz Kinnestiel in Riga, Jungfernhof. Yeah, this was the photo he came with. If I wouldn't have had that, he never would have come. So, but he said, if I can tell him a little bit about his history also, he couldn't remember, then this would be a good base to come. And this was him. We had a good time together, and we visited us. So they didn't come back again, but I was with my family there. And in the following time, I encountered more people who had relatives here. For example, Mr. Meyer-Schwarz, he lives in the Ashkenazi house in Jerusalem. Yeah, if I understood him well, he is the founder of the hydroculture. So yeah, for saving water. He has 11 children, and he was very small. And then Mr. Kohlmeier came from New Orleans, and so just to tell you that there, with the beginning of the research, we started something in the whole world. Yeah, also I really, up to now, I have some requests and emails and contacts, just to let the people know what I know about their ancestors and about their relatives here. And so to come to an end, in the following year after Albert's visit here, we established a memorial here, and all, of course, they know it, and I also the pupils were involved. And this would be my dream, that this is really a building for historical memorization and formation. This would be my, because since then I make with the different classes, so since 7 years, I think, or 8, I make it, I make peer guiding. So I ask voluntary in the 9th grade here in Eckental if they want to do peer guiding for their peers, so for their classes. And these are different classes from the last years. And they always end in front of the Stele, what we call it. And here you see, we put 2 people in to give them a look as if somebody lives in now. Yeah, but actually the whole time since 1938, since the pogrom night, it is in the hand of the community here. It is what we call Aryanicized, which is a Nazi word. So it is stolen from the Jewish owners.